Hey, greetings. Welcome back to Sean's Irish Whiskey Shelf, coming at you from the heart of the United States out here in the Midwest. And as always, before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. Want to remind everybody of my favorite online vendor, Hard to Find Whiskey. You can find them right down there at htfw.com. They've got a great selection of alcoholic beverages. Doesn't have to be Irish whiskey, although I really prefer Irish whiskey. You can find Scotch and Japanese whiskey and bourbon whiskey and rye whiskey, vodka, tequila, rum. They have lots of things there. So check them out. International shipping. They are overseas, but their shipping rates are very reasonable. Very knowledgeable folks, fast shipping, great selection. I really hope that you give them a try if there's something that you're looking for and you can't find it at your favorite liquor store here in the States. Also, reminder, takes just a second. If you like the video, go down there, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed already, you can go down the other corner and click on subscribe. It takes you just a second, and it means a lot to me because it lets me know that you're enjoying the content that I'm producing. It also keeps YouTube happy because it gets more clicks and it just makes them happy. So, what I have for you this evening is a bottle of Dead Rabbit. Now, I originally had a bottle of this, and I lost it in the Great Irish Whiskey Disaster of 2021. My beautiful bride found a bottle for me when she was traveling, picked it up, and replaced the one that I had lost. It's not really easy to find. They don't seem to, either they don't make a lot of it, or what they do make, they don't distribute a lot of it. But I'm very happy to get my hands back on this bottle. And some of you might look at this and go, Dead Rabbit. Why would someone call Irish whiskey Dead Rabbit? Well, if you go back several videos, we talked about Hellcat Maggie. Hellcat Maggie was arguably one of the fiercest fighters in the Dead Rabbit gang, which plagued New York City back in the mid to late 19th century, around the 1850s, 1860s. Looks like by about the 1870s, the whole gang thing started dying out. And their primary rival was the Bowery Boys, but that wasn't the only rival they had. They had a lot of rivals. It's just the Bowery Boys and the Dead Rabbit gang. They, from what I read, they had like 200 different gang clashes between them. And a lot of times, there were so many gang members that were clashing, they outnumbered the NYPD. They even outnumbered the New York State Guard. So, it was our National Guard, I should say. So, really, a lot of people that were fighting against each other. And of course, the Dead Rabbits gang was made up primarily of Irish Americans. So, we're going to fast forward to February the 12th of 2013. It was on that day in Lower Manhattan that a bar opened up for the first time called the Dead Rabbit Bar. Not very well known, kind of a best kept secret in Lower Manhattan. But by 2016, that bar had been voted one of the best drinking holes in the whole world. Not just New York, not just the United States, but the whole world. So the bar really gained in popularity. They also have, as I looked on their website, they have Irish whiskey there that is just phenomenal. If you want to try different Irish whiskey, the Dead Rabbit Bar is where you want to go because they have just all kinds of offerings of Irish whiskey. So 5 years after they opened, February 12th, 2018, they released Dead Rabbit Irish Whisky, commemorating their 5th year in business. So what they did is, the first thing, well, couple of things they did. How about we do that? They designed the bottle with a nod to John Morrissey. Now, John Morrissey was a U.S. congressman. Before he was a U.S. congressman from New York, though, he was also a bare-knuckled fighter. Just an awesome bare-knuckled fighter. One of his bouts went 37 rounds before he was declared the winner. So he was a terror in the ring, and he was also a member of the Dead Rabbits gang. So, yeah, politician, crook, boxer. He had his hand in a bunch of gambling establishments. So, yeah, he was a colorful character. We'll leave it at that. All right. So that's the design of the bottle. The proprietors of the bar, their names are right on here. You've got Jack McGarry and Sean Muldoon. They are the ones who decided, as owners of the bar, that they were going to create this whiskey. It is created in collaboration with the Dublin Liberties Distillery and their master distiller, Daryl McNally. It is a blend of single grain and single malt, which we've had on here before. Several different blends we've looked at that are single grain, single malt. It is 44%, so that would be 88 proof. That's a number that we haven't seen very often. In fact, I don't think we have anything else back here that's 88 proof. Aged 5 years, so a little bit past that 3-year mark. It's aged in ex-bourbon barrels, and it's finished in virgin American oak barrels. So, that's a little bit about Dead Rabbit. I recalled from when I first had it that it was really pretty good. And we're going to find out again just how good it is. By the way, about $40. So, you know, it's a whiskey that you can pick up and not drop a lot of change on. And, you know, as I will say to all of you, and one of the questions that we ask is it worth $40? Is it worth dropping that extra $10 over something like a Tullamore Dew, a Bushmills, or something like that? So that's what we're going to find out. Okay. So, right away, because it's 88 proof, it's going to have a little bit more of a kick to it than your typical 80 proof. I taste the single grain, I think, a little more than the single malt. I kind of like my whiskeys. If we're going to have the single grain, single malt blend, I think the single malt being a little bit heavier than the still grain kind of pleases my palate a little bit more because of the 3 types of Irish whiskey: single pot still, single malt, single grain. Single grain is probably my least favorite. And this one just kind of strikes me as potentially being a little heavier on the single grain than the single malt, as opposed to last week. Right? Last week, you remember, we did Writer's Tears, or might not even been a week ago. Last episode, we'll call it that. Last episode, we looked at Writer's Tears. And Writer's Tears, in my estimation, had a little bit more of the single malt taste over the single grain. I think this one is, to my palate anyway, I think it has a little bit more of the single grain over the single malt. It just seems to me, in my blue-collar palate, that the single grain taste is trying to peek its way through that single malt barrier. So is it a bad whiskey? No. Is it, if I had $40 to spend on this versus Writer's Tears? which would I get? I think I'd probably do Writer's Tears, just because that's my palate. Is this worth $40? Is this worth you dropping an extra 10 spot over your everyday sipping whiskey? Potentially. If your palate is one where you like that sweetness of the single grain, then you'll probably like this better than the Writer's Tears. If your palate is one where you like the fruitiness of the single malt, then I think you're probably going to like the Writer's Tears a little bit better. Either way, folks, this is arguably worth $10 more than your everyday sippers. I think it is a good whiskey. I find it to have some nice character to it. I was trying to remember if they put on here. Let me see real quick. Yep, lingering note of bourbon vanilla sweetness. So it does. It definitely has a little bit of that sweetness. But I really think that the single malt fruitiness is definitely in the background. And I think the single grain is coming out there. So overall, great drop of whiskey. Again, I wouldn't take it over the Writer's Tears, but I would gladly pay $40 or so for a bottle of this if I wanted to step my game up a little bit from my everyday sippers. So, hey folks, that's all I have for you this evening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you enjoy every drop of Irish whiskey that you have, because, hey, remember, anytime that you can have a drop of Irish whiskey, that's a good time to have a drop of Irish whiskey, right? But folks, remember, do it responsibly, because I want you to be here next week for our next video. Not exactly sure what we're doing next week, but there's a possibility that maybe what we do is we stack this up with the Writer's Tears right away while it's fresh in our minds. I don't know yet. We'll see. Always find something, right? So until we do meet again for the next video, I'd like you to be well and be safe. All right? Sláinte. Bye now.